Hi everybody, and welcome to Lovefraud Live. Psychopaths have the capacity to behave normally. They can be charming, helpful, complimentary, and then they can turn aggressive, cruel, and even criminal. So, if you explain to them how hurtful their behavior is, will they change? I'm Donna Andersen, author of Lovefraud.com, and tonight I'll describe 6 changes that psychopaths will never make. At the end of my presentation, I'll answer your questions. To join the chat or ask a question, please subscribe to this YouTube channel. Many of us may be dealing with a psychopath and not realize it. The person's behavior is inconsistent. One minute he's calm and the next minute he's raging. She can seem so warm and then she's cold and uncaring. So we wonder, sometimes their behavior is fine. Do they just need therapy to help them stabilize? The answer is no. I'll explain 6 changes that psychopaths will never make. First, here's some background. Back in 2004, I traveled to Great Falls, Montana to attend a workshop presented by Dr. Robert Hare, a top psychopathy researcher. He is author of the book Without Conscience: The Disturbing World of Psychopaths Among Us. The book perfectly describes my ex-husband, and it's essential reading for anyone who wants to understand exploitative personality disorders. Dr. Hare developed the Psychopathy Checklist Revised, or PCLR, which is a rating scale used to evaluate a person's level of disorder. People attended the Montana workshop to learn how to use it. Most of them worked in Montana's prison system. Dr. Hare himself started his career working in prisons, and the original purpose of the PCLR was to estimate an inmate's potential for reoffending when they were released. So he began the workshop by explaining the basic philosophy of most correctional systems. Here it is. Offender problems are due to socialization problems. He said prison officials viewed antisocial behavior as the result of inadequate parenting, a bad environment, disruptive social forces, or simply bad luck. Their objective was to re-socialize offenders to get them back on track. But psychopaths never were on track. At the workshop I attended with Dr. Hare, the famous researcher said that the core symptoms of psychopathy are strongly determined by genetics. The parenting that at-risk children receive and the environment that they grow up in also influence their development. By the time these people are adults, the disorder is part of their identities. Dr. Hare said that attempting any of the following 6 behavior modifications with psychopaths is a total waste of time. Here's number 1. Correcting deviant attitudes. To make a correction, someone must come to think that there's a problem with the attitude that they have. Psychopaths are perfectly satisfied with themselves. In fact, they consider themselves to be superior to the rest of us, so they see no reason to change. Here's number 2. Getting them to look at the victim's perspective. Well, psychopaths view the world as predators and prey. They are the predators and everybody else is prey. Do they care what the prey think? Absolutely not. If anyone is stupid enough to be manipulated, from their point of view, that's the victim's problem, not theirs. Here's number 3. training them to be less self-centered. Most of us have the ability to love and care about others. Psychopaths do not. They feel no loyalty to any person, group, code, organization, or philosophy. They are loyal only to themselves, and they aren't going to change. Here's the fourth useless attempt: having them adopt a pro-social philosophy. Psychopaths can sometimes engage in pro-social behavior, meaning they can help people. It's not that they believe in doing good works, they're just doing whatever they think will accomplish their objective. They always have an ulterior motive. Here's number 5, focusing on emotions. Psychopaths do not have a natural understanding of emotions. Often, they don't feel anything at all. Dr. Hare explained that psychopaths experience emotion as a foreign language that needs to be translated. Typically, the only spontaneous emotions they feel are anger and rage. Finally, here's number 6, instilling a sense of empathy. It's often said that psychopaths lack empathy, but this may not quite be accurate. Researchers have found that psychopaths have the capacity for empathy in their brains, but it's usually turned off. They can be empathetic when they focus on it, which is why they sometimes appear to be caring. So, those are the 6 changes that psychopaths will never make. When it comes to understanding psychopaths, one of the hardest things to grasp is how fundamentally different they are from the rest of us. It's not that they were once loving and kind and went bad. They never had the ability to love to begin with. Therefore, psychopaths have no internal foundation for therapy to build upon. Attempts at behavior modifications for psychopaths that focus on emotions, empathy, and morality are all destined to fail. That's the presentation for tonight. Next, I'll answer your questions. If you want in-depth advice for your own situation, I offer personal consultations and a new service for deep emotional release, in which I help you to process the wounds of your experience. There's a link in the description below the video. Okay. So, kind of says that the sociopath is trying to use religion as a way to draw me in. That is, believe it or not, fairly common. And there's quite a few reasons for that. One of them is that people who have religious values tend to be trusting and tend to be helpful and tend to be honest and willing to help people and willing to turn the other cheek or see the other side or something along those lines. So consequently, plenty of psychopaths and also antisocials and narcissists see people who are religious or faithful or churchgoers as easy targets. I mean, I've heard of plenty of stories of psychopaths who are essentially, going through the whole congregation, trying to figure out who they can take advantage of. And I've heard of plenty of psychopaths who were actually members of the clergy or priests or gurus or spiritual leaders themselves. And in fact, quite a few times in the surveys that I did, I asked the question of whether or not the people that the survey respondents were describing made false claims about themselves. And I asked about particular types of personalities and different types of occupations and claims that the people make. For example, did the person falsely claim to be military, or did they falsely claim to be medical or doctors, or did they falsely claim to be entrepreneurs? Well, the biggest category that people said psychopaths falsely claimed to be was born again, Christian, or religious. About 20% of survey respondents, and this was over multiple surveys, said that the psychopath or sociopath that they knew made these claims about being religious when in fact it was totally false. So the thing to do kinda is to stay strong and get the person out of your life. Recognize that if he, or I guess it's a he, if he is trying to convince you that he's religious, it's an act. They're just, it's just not true at all. And he's using it to try and manipulate what's important to you, which is your faith. He's just using that as a hook to try and grab you. So I would say get rid of him. So kind of has another comment. Oh, geez. He seems to think he was not diagnosed correctly when he was in prison. He was diagnosed as a narcissist or a sociopath. Okay, so the man was in prison. That's never a good sign. And this actually perfectly describes what I'm talking about, because religious people often are taught to be forgiving and taught to that Jesus works in mysterious ways or something along those lines. And so that could be part of your belief system, and it sounds like he's trying to take advantage of your belief system. So I think the best thing that you could do was put an end to your involvement and go no contact with this person. Okay, so Mommy Phone says, I'm 59 and my mother is sociopathic. She is 86. I went no contact last year. I struggle in life. My daughter helps support me. I want to thrive and not just survive. How do I do the emotional recovery? Well, the first step is what you've already taken, which is going no contact with your mother. And I did write a book last year that came out called Senior Sociopaths, How to Recognize and Escape Lifelong Abusers. And the book was based on my research with 2,400 people who believed that they were involved with someone who was disordered, probably antisocial, sociopathic, psychopathic, and who was age 50 or older. And the key finding of the book is that sociopaths do not improve as they age. They continue to be just as bad, or they get worse. And that was the response from 91% of the survey respondents who knew the people both before and after they were age 50. So even though she's 86, I'm sure she's still doing whatever she's been doing all her life, as much as she can, given whatever physical limitations she may be, but she's probably still miserable and still demanding. And it's good. It's good that you've broken off contact. The recovery process means to allow yourself to feel the pain of your experiences. And given that this was your mother, and sounds like she's been in your life your entire life, I'm sure you're dealing with many emotional wounds, and you may not even realize that you have the wounds, because one of the ways people survive, especially if you're dealing with a disordered mother and you were a child, as a child, you don't have the skills to figure out what's going on, and all you can do is try and figure out how to survive. So consequently, many people who, especially women with sociopathic mothers, many of them turn into people pleasers, and they feel like they don't deserve anything for themselves. And their whole role in life is to be a servant to the mother, or something along those lines. It goes really deep. So what I would suggest is that you make a commitment to yourself that you're going to do the emotional work. We have lots of information on Lovefraud about how to do that, but the key is that, first of all, separate from her, detach from her, which you've done, so that's the first step. And then secondly, you want to allow yourself to actually feel and process what you've experienced. It's not fun. It's not pretty. You may find yourself crying a lot or curled up in a ball on the floor, but it is absolutely worth the effort to really get inside of yourself and find those emotional sore spots and really allow yourself to experience them, because when you do that, that's how they escape, they get out of your system, and then you can move forward. Okay, so Lisa says, the only genuine emotion my sociopath had was anger and rage. His eyes would grow dark, almost black. That's really common. About the only thing that sociopaths experience spontaneously is anger and rage. And then the eyes. A lot of people have reported that when they see when their sociopath went into a rage, the eyes just got black. I mean, a lot of people, thought there was a demon inside or something like that. And what's actually happening is that it's an aggression response, in that because the sociopath is so angry that it trips all these internal mechanisms that make the eyes dilate. And so what happens is the pupils get really large, and that's why the eyes look so black. But the thing to understand about this is that it's a very strong warning sign that the psychopath or sociopath may lash out and may become violent and may become aggressive. So it's really a big warning sign. So I'm hoping that you're away from this person. It sounds like you were. So I mean, if you're seeing that, it's a good reason to get away. Okay, so Sandra says, I can't stop wanting to expose ex-husband 30-year marriage in which he was living a double life. Many partners anticipated $1 million of our marital assets. The therapist attorneys say it's the worst case that's ever seen. Well, Sandra, Lovefraud will soon be starting a podcast in which we're talking about all the cases that I have. I've got more than 10 or 12,000 cases at this point. So if you want to go to lovefraud.com and scroll down to the bottom of the homepage, and there's a link to share your story. You could tell your story there if you want. And also, we are able to use stories anonymously if necessary. So anyhow, that it might be something that you want to consider, but also keep in mind that there can be some dangers to exposing a sociopath. One of which is that they could sue you for defamation, because typically, and I have a whole article about this on Lovefraud about exposing the sociopath. You might want to take a look at that. But typically what sociopaths do is they engage in sexual promiscuity, and they commit fraud and, perhaps steal from employers and things like that. So anyhow, they engage in all these behaviors that, according to defamation law, are automatically defamatory if you talk about them. Because according to defamation law, you're not supposed to talk about people's sexual behavior. You're not supposed to talk about anything that will injure their professional careers. Well, that's what psychopaths do. So it can be kind of dicey exposing them. I was able to do it because my ex-husband was found guilty of fraud. So if you have court cases that prove what he did, that's really helpful. But anyhow, there's some resources on Lovefraud if you want to take a look. So Mimmi says, the sociopaths I know became worse when getting older. They get better at creating problems. You're absolutely correct. And that's what I found in my senior sociopaths book. Case after case after case of people talking about how the sociopath they knew just got worse. And the book describes all types of relationships. It's not just romantic relationships. I have survey respondents talking about their parents and their siblings and their work colleagues and their neighbors. So sociopaths affect lots of people in their lives, and anybody who's kind of hanging around hoping that they'll calm down or mellow out when they get older, you're wasting your time. And you really need to be aware of that so you can make appropriate decisions about what to do. Sandra, oh geez, we had a great marriage and I bragged about him until I found out. Yeah. I totally understand. And it's amazing how slick they are and how they're able to keep the charade going and juggle all the lies, and it's just amazing. So I'm sure that was devastating to find the truth. So Lisa says, he said he took anger management classes at his work after an abusive incident. I think he lied to me or the classes didn't work. Well, if he's a sociopath with his eyes turning black when he gets angry, I guarantee you that the classes didn't work, because someone with that level of rage, anger management class isn't going to do a thing. It's just not going to have an effect. Okay, so Mim says, mine looked like a security camera looking around constantly with an angry face. Well, it sounds like you said that in the past tense, so I hope that means you're away from this person, because, yeah, I mean, that certainly would not be pleasant. Okay, so that looks like all the questions that we have for today. Thank you, everybody, for joining me for this episode of Lovefraud Live, and we'll be back next Tuesday, 8 o'clock Eastern Time, here on YouTube. See you then. Bye-bye.